Amid the fiery clouds of the Pacific, two titans of the skies fought a showdown that echoes to this day in the pages of military history. On one side, the F4U Corsair, a steel beast with gull-shaped wings and a roar that heralded destruction. On the other, the A6M Zero, fast, agile, and lethal, feared like a speeding ghost among Allied pilots. But this clash was about more than power or speed. It was a clash between two philosophies of war, two worlds in conflict. American raw engineering versus Japanese surgical precision. Each dogfight was not just an exchange of gunfire, it was a clash of ideals, a struggle for air supremacy that unfolded over oceans infested with death. Prepare to relive a legendary duel, not just of machines, but of men, tactics, and courage, which together shaped the fate of the greatest conflict in history. On the vastest and most unforgiving front of World War II, where the ocean was as lethal as the enemy, supremacy in the skies became the dividing line between advance and annihilation. It was in this scenario, marked by islands transformed into fortresses and seas into steel platforms, that two fighters emerged as archetypes of the powers in conflict: the F4U Corsair of the United States and the A6M Zero of Imperial Japan. The Corsair was not just another aircraft on the American assembly line. It was a metallic monster that took the doctrine of air superiority through brute force to the extreme. With its robust silhouette, wings folded in the shape of an inverted gull, and a roar that imposed itself before it was even seen, the Corsair symbolized American industrial power transposed to the skies of the Pacific. It was designed not only to survive combat, but to dominate every inch of the airspace with speed, firepower, and endurance. On the other side, the Zero represented a radically different philosophy. Designed to be light, agile, and precise, it was conceived as an extension of the pilot's instincts. Its maneuvers flowed so naturally that it seemed to defy the laws of physics. It carried no armor, it had no self-sealing tanks. Every gram of weight was considered an obstacle to its mission, to surprise, surround, and eliminate. In the early years of the war, this logic worked with devastating efficiency. The Zero was not only feared, it was misunderstood by its adversaries. The collision between these two machines was inevitable, but its origins were not in the hangars. They were on the political map of a decade in turmoil. With the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Japan broke the already fragile balance in the Pacific and began a devastating military offensive. In a few months, it conquered vast territories in Southeast Asia, advancing by sea, air, and land with meticulous precision. For the United States, this was not just an attack, it was a call for total war. The response would not be limited to land or sea. Air dominance would become central, not as a supporting role, but as the protagonist of future campaigns. In each mission, in each escort, in each duel in the clouds, decisions would not be merely technical. They would be strategic, political, and, above all, existential. It was in this monumental theater of war that Corsair and Zero met, not as isolated machines, but as representatives of two opposing worlds. One forged in mass production, armored against failure. The other, molded in extreme lightness, refined by the tradition of discipline and sacrifice. The clash that would follow would transcend any confrontation between aircraft. It would be the clash between doctrines, between civilizations, between different ways of understanding the role of technology on the battlefield. The skies of the Pacific would become the field where not only machines would face off, but where the fate of nations would be written, one mission at a time. Designed by Vought, the Corsair was more than just an airplane. It was a flying giant. Powered by the Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine, with 18 cylinders roaring like mechanical thunder, the Corsair reached speeds of over 700 kilometers an hour. Armored like a tank, it carried 6.50 caliber machine guns, bombs, and rockets, ready to destroy targets in the air and on the ground. Its famous inverted gull wing was not only stylish, it was an ingenious engineering solution to accommodate a nearly 4-meter propeller without compromising the height of the landing gear. This allowed landings on aircraft carriers, a crucial differentiator in the Pacific. On the other side, the Zero, the Japanese answer to air supremacy. Created by Mitsubishi under the leadership of engineer Jiro Horikoshi, its philosophy was clear: absolute lightness and agility. With a 940 horsepower Nakajima Sakai engine, the Zero could reach speeds of around 330 miles per hour. But speed was not its trump card. Maneuverability was its deadly weapon. To achieve this feat, brutal sacrifices were made. No armor, no self-sealing tanks, no margin for error. But the result was an aircraft that performed tight turns and acrobatics with unparalleled fluidity, a true flying katana. Where the Corsair was a hammer, designed to crush with power and endurance, the Zero was a blade, made to cut with surgical precision. A deadly duelist versus an armored giant. Every encounter in the skies was more than a combat. It was a philosophical clash between East and West, between mechanical efficiency and lethal lightness. When these two aircraft met, the outcome was unpredictable and often lethal. The first direct contact between Corsairs and Zeros occurred in 1943 in the scorching Solomon Islands Theater of Operations. There, U.S. Marine pilots began operating the Corsair from improvised airstrips on land, challenging the previously unquestioned Japanese air dominance. The Zero had a clear and terrifying advantage in turns. If an American pilot, no matter how brave, tried to engage a Zero in a circling fight, defeat was almost certain. The Japanese pilots, masters of maneuver, could easily position themselves on the tail of an opponent and deliver the killing blow. But the Americans learned quickly, and the Corsair had an ace up its sleeve: the boom and zoom tactic. By using its superior speed and power to dive down on the enemy, fire a precise burst, and climb quickly, the Corsair could attack without getting bogged down in prolonged dogfights where the Zero reigned supreme. Another crucial tactic developed by American pilots was the thatch weave, created by Lieutenant Commander John S. Thatch. Flying in pairs, American fighters would weave a web in the sky. If a Zero attacked one of the planes, its companion would turn toward the attacker, forcing it to abandon pursuit or become the target itself. This mutual defense tactic neutralized the Zero's maneuverability advantage and allowed American pilots, even in less agile aircraft, to defend themselves and counterattack effectively. Altitude was also a determining factor. The Corsair operated best at medium and high altitudes, where its power stood out and the thinner air did not hamper its performance as much. The Zero, on the other hand, was more effective at low altitudes, where its lightness and agility made all the difference. In combat, knowing how to exploit this detail could be the difference between life and death. The pilot's experience also counted, and a lot. At the start of the war, the Japanese had highly trained veterans, many of them forged in the China campaigns, with hundreds of hours of combat flying time. The Americans, on the other hand, were largely inexperienced young men who had learned to fight the hard way in the hostile skies of the Pacific. But as the years passed, the balance shifted dramatically. The Japanese losses of experienced pilots, such as at the Battle of Midway, became irreparable. Japan, with a long and highly selective training program, could not replace its aces as quickly as it lost them. On the other side, the United States, with its vast industrial capacity and mass training programs, not only produced aircraft at a dizzying pace, but also trained thousands of new pilots who quickly gained combat experience. This had a direct impact on the effectiveness of the Zeros, which were now flown by young, poorly trained pilots facing increasingly experienced and deadly American veterans. The Corsair Zero clashes were not just contests of technology and skill. They were symbolic battles between two powers engaged in all-out war. The decline of the Zero, the once invincible weapon of the Empire of the Rising Sun, symbolized the gradual collapse of Japanese military might. The Corsair's growing dominance in the skies over the Pacific, in turn, represented the overwhelming logistical and technological superiority of the Allies by the end of the conflict. American aircraft production during the war outstripped Japan's by a ratio of nearly 4-to-1, an industrial gulf that Japan simply could not bridge. The lessons learned from these clashes shaped the future of military aviation. The idea of sacrificing protection for lightness, the core philosophy of the Zero, was abandoned. The war demonstrated that a fighter had to be able to absorb damage and return to base. The American approach, a combination of speed, firepower, endurance, and technological superiority, became the standard for post-war fighters, influencing aircraft design for decades. Furthermore, the Corsair remained in service for many years after the end of World War II, serving with distinction in the Korean War, a testament to its robust and adaptable design. The Zero, on the other hand, quickly disappeared from the military scene, becoming a relic of an era when agility reigned supreme, but one that could not withstand the relentless advance of technology and mass production. The duel between the F4U Corsair and the A6M Zero is more than a technical comparison between two aircraft. It is the portrait of a war of strategies, design philosophies, and human sacrifices. A war fought not only in direct combat, but with intelligence, strategy, and, above all, the indomitable courage of the men who piloted these machines. On one side, the fighter that defied the logic of engineering with its gull wings and gigantic engine. On the other, the versatile plane capable of dodging fire, a combination of agility and precision. Both left indelible marks on history and deserve to be remembered, not only as machines of destruction, but as extensions of the bravery and sacrifice of thousands of pilots who risked everything in the vast and dangerous skies of the Pacific. If you liked the story of the confrontation between the most iconic fighters of World War II, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and share this video with those who love history and aviation. And of course, tell us in the comments, in your opinion, who won this legendary duel? The overwhelming power of the Corsair or the unmatched agility of the Zero? See you on the next flight through history.